Oh, hey Snoopy. What? I like writing in nature's majesty. I'm writing about you and your Christmas special. Did you know you're voiced by the director and that the special was made in no time at all? And most of the voice actors are too young to read? And the special was sponsored by a corporation? Despite the anti-consumerist message? And the network thought you would fail? But despite everything, you became the most successful Christmas special of all time? You want me to tell you the full story? Then come sit with me while I finish the script. Snoopy, Charlie Brown, Lucy, Linus, Franklin, and Pigpen. Across 17,897 published comic strips over the course of 50 years, Charles Schulz created one of the most enduring casts of characters with his Peanuts comic strip. The ideas that would become Peanuts first began to take shape with his comic series Little Folks in the late 1940s, with these stories being published in smaller publications. However, once given a bigger stage, Peanuts finally premiered in October 1950. Charles Schulz often pulled inspiration from his childhood, where he was frequently mocked for being the youngest, tiniest, skinniest kid in the playground because he skipped a grade. That sense of vulnerability became the emotional core of the strip. Charlie Brown is a stand-in for Schulz's life. What Charlie Brown felt, Schulz felt. By the late 50s, Ford contacts Schulz to see if he's interested in licensing out his characters for a car commercial. Schulz had done this plenty of times before. Licensing out characters was not new. What was new was the medium, animation. The Peanuts characters had only ever been cartoons, never animated, and Schulz was incredibly protective of his characters. He was the strip's sole creator, writing, drawing, inking, and lettering every strip, every day. Letting someone else interpret his characters was uncharted territory, but Schulz nonetheless steps into the unknown and partners with animator Bill Melendez to bring his Peanuts characters to life for the very first time. And in 1959, the Peanuts made their animated debut in a series of Ford commercials, and a partnership was born. Melendez would become one of the few people Schulz could trust with his characters, and by the mid-1960s, 15 years after their first publication, Peanuts became a worldwide sensation. Simultaneously, documentarian Lee Mendelson had just completed his film on baseball player Willie Mays, and happened to read a Peanuts cartoon strip all about Charlie Brown's baseball team. Mendelson loved the comic, and in turn, Schulz loved Mendelson's film. So in 1963, the two partnered on a documentary all about Schulz and his comic, titled A Boy Named Charlie Brown. Little did the two know, this was the beginning of a 30-year-long friendship. Another friendship would soon emerge from the project. This documentary would also mark the first time jazz musician Vince Guaraldi would score original music for Mendelssohn. This would be the project that created the now classic track, Linus and Lucy. Now, after the project was done, Mendelssohn struggled to find a network willing to air it. But after the Peanuts appear on the cover of Time magazine, Mendelssohn gets a call from advertising executives representing Coca-Cola. He thinks, great, they love the documentary, they want to pick it up. This was not the case. In fact, the documentary would never get picked up. However, Coke may have sponsored the project in some way, perhaps only to get it screened at the San Francisco Advertising Club, because a Coke title does appear in the documentary, but it remains unclear as to the level of their involvement. Instead, Coke proposes a new project, a Christmas special. We'd like to sponsor a Christmas special. We liked your Peanuts project. We also like last year's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You ever thought of any Christmas peanutty things? Sure! Sparky and I have plenty of ideas. Great. Well, it's Thursday now. How about you give us the outline on Monday? Sure. Yeah, sure. That's perfect. Great. Sparky, I just sold a Charlie Brown Christmas. Great. What's that? It's what you, Bill, and I are writing this weekend. And right they did. On Monday they pitched to Coke, and on Tuesday they were greenlit. And suddenly, Charlie Brown was headed to television for his first ever special at CBS. But there was a catch. They only had 6 months to meet their deadline, and none of them had ever made a half-hour special before. So, they quickly built their team. Charles Sparky Schulz would write the special, Jose Cuauhtémoc Bill Melendez would direct, Vince Dr. Funk Guaraldi would create the soundtrack, and Lee, no nickname Mendelssohn, would produce. Little did the team know, but they were about to create one of the most beloved Christmas specials of all time. And they did so not by playing it safe, but by taking risk after risk after risk. And that first risk came with Charles Schultz, who centered the special around Charlie Brown and his depression, which deepens during the holiday season. Throughout the story, Charlie struggles to cope with a Christmas that feels like it's lost its true spirit. His baby sister asks Santa for 10s and 20s. Lucy dreams of the gift of real estate. Even Snoopy decorates his doghouse not out of joy, but to win a contest. These ideas had been explored in his strips before, so it only felt natural to carry them into animation. His special wouldn't just be festive. It would be quietly existential and question a holiday that he felt had traded in tradition for transaction. Which leads us directly to the special's most controversial choice. Schultz was adamant that Linus recite Luke chapter 2 from the Bible word for word. Both Mendelsohn and Melendez questioned the decision. Was this the right idea? Can you put this on TV? At the time, religion and animation simply didn't mix. But Schultz wouldn't budge. He had quoted the Bible in his comic strip before and had been criticized for placing something so sacred into what some called crass. This criticism offended Schultz deeply. He was a religious man. He even taught adult Sunday school at his local Methodist church. He believed the Bible belonged to everybody. So, when doubt creeped in, he turned to his collaborators and said, "If we don't do it, who will?" So right away, this was a Christmas special about a depressed Charlie Brown with a Bible passage sitting squarely at its center. CBS was already worried, but they'd soon find even more to be worried about when the creative team took yet another risk. They firmly believed that their character should be voiced by actual children, something that was completely unheard of at the time. When there's a children's character in a cartoon, they would be voiced by adults, someone that could hit their marks every time and deliver with professionalism and accuracy. The team wanted authenticity, and authenticity they got. Most of the voice cast was between 4 and 10 years old, and many of them had never even acted before. Only Peter Robbins, who voiced Charlie Brown, and Christopher Shea, who voiced Linus, had any prior acting experience. On top of this, many of these kids at the time couldn't even read, so they had to be told their parts line by line. Director Melendez often joked that Charlie even had a little Latino flair to him because Robbins would copy the exact cadence of Melendez's readings. The results were performances that were occasionally awkward, sometimes choppy, but completely honest. These imperfect deliveries added authenticity to the Peanuts gang. Now, this next creative choice put the team in direct opposition with the sponsors and the network. They absolutely refused to make the special with a laugh track. At the time, laugh tracks were incredibly common in sitcoms and animated series, such as The Rocky and Bullwinkle Show.
Hey up there! You dropped your sieve! Booty! Booty!
It served as reassurance. It guided audiences on when to laugh and how to feel. The network thought that without a laugh track, audiences wouldn't be able to connect with the program, but the team held firm in their decision. However, there are rumors that the network went behind the team's back and produced a version of the special with the laugh track. But if it was produced, it's never seen the light of day. One of their big final risks was this. They wanted Vince Guaraldi back. The network was skeptical, to say the least. Jazz in a children's special? But the team held firm in their love for Guaraldi's sound. His work on the documentary had already captured the world of Peanuts perfectly. So, working in a small trio, Guaraldi created a soundtrack that was both melancholy, festive, and personal. A musical mirror of Charlie's inner feelings. So, over the course of 6 months, the team created a Charlie Brown Christmas. The dialogue was recorded in a single chaotic day, with children running everywhere. The animation team sent the production nearly $20,000 over budget, relying on overseas animation studios to put the finishing touches on nearly 13,000 individual animation cells. Even the children's choir sessions went late, angering parents and resulting in different kids being present at different sessions. Finally, 10 days before the premiere, A Charlie Brown Christmas was finished. The core production team with a handful of animators finally gathered to watch the final cut of their special. And when it ended, both Mendelsohn and Melendez came to the same conclusion. Mendelsohn and Melendez were distraught. They thought they had completely ruined the Peanuts. It was too slow, too quiet, too sad, and too different. However, there was one animator that disagreed. He stood up proudly after the screening and said, "This special is going to run for 100 years." Mendelsohn and Melendez thought he was crazy. But there were a few things they could do to improve the special. For instance, they reworked some dialogue and added lyrics to Christmas Time Is Here, with Mendelsohn jotting down the tune in a single afternoon. But sooner than later, it was time for CBS to see it. And they hated it. They hated the voice acting, they hated the jazz, and they thought the whole thing was just depressing. And then the sponsor comes in and says, well, good job, guys. You did your best. We're already locked into a time slot, so there's not much we can do about it. So we'll air it once, and that'll be that. The whole team was destroyed. They thought that they had just created the first and last Peanuts special. But then came hope. Time magazine was allowed to see the special early and soon published a glowing review. A Charlie Brown Christmas is one children's special that bears repeating. And soon after, Coca-Cola sent out press releases on the special, and TV listings across the country had the Peanuts gang on their front pages. Suddenly there was optimism, but they wouldn't know if their special worked until it aired on December 9th, 1965. It was a hit. Nearly 50% of all TVs turned on that night were tuned into A Charlie Brown Christmas. This was nearly 15 million households. It was number 2 on the Nielsen ratings, and audiences loved it. The message resonated, and the voice acting was seen as authentic and real. It felt like a sincere, gentle, and truthful celebration of Christmas. Needless to say, the creative team was stunned. Well, all except for one vindicated animator who knew all along. And the network, they were thrilled. The next week, they quickly announced that A Charlie Brown Christmas would return the following holiday season, and quickly ordered 4 more specials from Melendez, Mendelsohn, and Schultz. A Charlie Brown Christmas would go on to win a Peabody Award and an Emmy for Outstanding Children's Programming. CBS would double down on Christmas-time entertainment, later premiering the animated adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas and Frosty the Snowman. The special would go on to re-air every holiday season for 35 years on CBS, then for the next 18 on ABC, and now lives in Apple TV Plus's library, where it occasionally streams for free during the holiday season. The only difference? Coke's sponsorship, which ended the year following its initial premiere. The titles? Gone from any current release. The team behind A Charlie Brown Christmas would go on to produce 5 more specials and a feature film in the 60s, 12 specials and 2 films in the 70s, 14 specials, 1 film, a television series, and a mini-series in the 80s, and 6 specials in the 90s. In the process, the Peanuts became more than a comic strip, more than a holiday tradition. They became a cornerstone of popular culture. Vince Guaraldi passed away in 1976, Charles Schultz in 2000, Bill Melendez in 2008, and Lee Mendelsohn in 2019. Together, they left behind a body of work defined by sincerity, authenticity, and emotional honesty. And, perhaps, they left behind one of the greatest Christmas specials ever made.